Okay, so let's go ahead and add two basic text boxes and some labels here to our form, so that way we can enter in the profile and the material grade. So first of all, on the designer, I'm going to actually just drag the form to be a little bit bigger here, and so I can just click on the form so we can see those grips, and then you can resize the form. Now over here in our toolbox on the left, I'm going to search for label. I'm going to go ahead and double click on that, and I'm going to double click on it again. And you'll see here on the form, it actually added two different labels here. Now the first label, I'm going to go over to the properties window here at the lower right hand corner, and I'll scroll down till I get to the text property. I'm going to go ahead and say profile and press enter. Then on label 2, I'll click on that and I'll change its text property to grade. Actually, let's use a US term, right? But that's going to be the material. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and go back over here to my all Windows Forms controls here in my toolbox, and I'm going to scroll down until I find the text box. All right, so there's the text box, and again I can double click on it, or if I just click and hold down my left mouse button, I can drag it directly on the form. Now I'm going to put this here just next to profile, and then I'm going to do this again by just adding another text box, and we'll just go ahead and line it up. You can see that it actually is pretty intelligent in Visual Studio to try to align things here for you, so that way they look really nice on your form. So I'm just going to resize that a little bit more. Now, the next thing here is that, this is just a little bit good coding practice. I should probably call this something other than text box 1. What am I talking about? If I actually click on this over here on the properties pane, you're going to see that it's called text box 1. And if I scroll my properties up to the top, here I can actually rename this to something that makes more sense to me. So I'm going to say text underscore profile. Then I'll do the same thing for the material grade. So I'll click on this one and I'll say text underscore grade. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because it's going to make it easier for me to actually go fetch the information properly from each of these text boxes and actually set it to the beam in the API code that I did a second ago. Now that I've got that, I'm going to go over here back to my Form 1 code. Okay, so here the button gets clicked and we have our code from before. But before any of this actually happens, I need to fetch the profile string from basically the dialog box. Now, again, please don't judge me, experienced programmers, that I'm putting my business logic or my actual direct code within the user interface events here. In later videos, I'll do this more appropriately, where I'll put this into a separate class and I'll have my user interface call that. But this is just, again, for beginning programmers and to show the basic mechanics of hooking up to the Tekla API to do things. So I will at least come up here and just declare some separate variables here. I'll just say profile and then equals text underscore, and there you go. There's the text boxes, right? There's my text profile and text grade. So I'm going to fetch the text profile, and look at that. It's actually trying to recommend with the IntelliSense to fill in the code automatically for me. So I'll just hit tab, tab, and that's what it's doing. It's reading the text field or the text property from the text profile text box. Let me make sure you know what that means. If I go back to the designer, I click on this text box. Its name is text profile down here in the properties window. And which property did we fetch? We're fetching the text property of that text box. And that's how we actually get the profile string. All right, well, let's do the next thing here. Let's do material equals text underscore grade dot text, and then we'll just end with a semicolon. Awesome. Now that we're getting those values, we're going to actually set those to these properties on the beam object. So there's the profile and the material. So instead of W12 by 14, which would be hard-coded, I'm going to type in profile there. So now profile is going to be mapped. Then I'm going to go ahead and also do the same thing with the material grade. So I'm going to say material. So there we go. Now, what happens if the user enters in something that is not a correct size or grade? So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to actually put some valid stuff here. So let's just do an if the profile equals empty string, or another way of doing this, or profile equals string.empty. This is another way of saying it. So basically, if the profile isn't filled in on the dialog box, I need to put something else there. So I'm going to say hardcode profile to be W12 by 14 if I don't type something else there. Now, another thing that I might do is that the Tekla profiles are generally all uppercase, and the user might type in lowercase. So I'm going to use this to upper function or method here on strings, and I can capitalize those string inputs. So I'm going to just say to upper, and there we go. So that'll just take anything that they type if they do lowercase or whatever, and it'll automatically convert it when I'm fetching it from the dialog box. Looks good so far. Now I can copy paste some code here. So let's just copy this and do the same thing for the material grade. So instead of profile, we'll just do material. So I'll just replace all these. Okay, and we'll change this to A992. So if material is basically string empty or blank, this is really the same thing. I just wanted you to see two different ways of doing this. Then I'm going to set these equal to profile material, because if they were blank, then I would not be able to actually insert this into the Tekla model. Okay, so now that we've got that all hooked up, let's actually build our application. So we'll go to build solution here, and that'll make a new updated version of the executable. And then I'm going to go ahead and run my application. So I'll just run that here, and then I'll go back into Tekla. I'll delete this beam out of the model that's already existing. And take a look at this. Here on the dialog box, we can go ahead and type in W24 by 55. Then I'm going to do it a material grade of A36. Now I'm intentionally doing the lower cases here so you can see what happens. So let's say create beam, and look at that. It automatically uppercases them and puts in the beam. So let me double click on this beam, and there you go. W24 by 55, A36 material. So there you go. That shows you how you can take inputs in simple text boxes from your dialog box and actually apply that to the objects that you're creating with the API. Okay, so let's do one other bonus here and maybe change the class number. So let's do Tekla beam, and then we'll do .class. Now, what's interesting is that here in the API, if you actually use this class property, you're going to notice that it actually expects a string. Now, that's kind of strange or weird in the sense that when you go into the model and you click on this, it looks like the class is actually an integer or a number. But for some reason, when you're passing that through the Tekla API into this property, it's expecting a string. So you have to say equals 3 in order to get, for instance, a green color or a class number 3 to be used here. Let's try this one more time. So I'm just going to go ahead and build. And honestly, you don't have to do the build. I just wanted you to understand what's actually happening. You could just go straight to the start button here, and that's actually going to do a build first. Then it's going to launch the application. And then I'll come in here, delete this out of the model, and I'll go, my app keeps disappearing because I don't have it as topmost. And when Tekla gets focused, my app goes away. That's why that keeps happening. But I'm just going to go ahead and type W12 by 14 and A992 here. And then I'll say create beam, and there we go. Now we have a beam that is green, and that class number 3 has been actually applied. So let me double click on that, and there you go. You can see class number 3. Now, since we have this as an external application and we don't want it to constantly lose focus when we select in Tekla, what we can do is we can actually go to our form designer. So we'll go back up here to the form design tab page. And if you just click on the form itself, the form highlights. Now down here in the properties at the lower right, there's this topmost option. It's currently set to false, and that's why it keeps on going behind when I click in Tekla. To make this application always stay on the top of Tekla, I'm going to go ahead and click on this drop down and choose the true option here. Now, if I then debug my application and start running this here, you can see that if I actually click on other applications such as in Tekla, you'll notice that my app stays on the top. It doesn't minimize or go away anymore. Another thing that we can do is let's just close that down and let's just set some defaults. So if I click on profile here, we can go to the text property and we can just type in W12 by 14 as an example. And then if the material grade we want is A992, in the text property for that, we'll just type in A992. And now we'll have some defaults so we don't have to type those in over and over. Now, there are some other ways to also store your defaults by actually reading all the inputs on the dialog box and storing them as a text file in the attributes folder in your model folder. That's something that we can do later on, but here you can just see some of the basic mechanics of how to create some things in the user interface and have that actually affect things on the objects you're creating in the Tekla model.